Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is Saira Mujtaba and with me is Renuka RS, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to inaugurate the 7th edition of Raisina Dialogue on the 25th of this month. European Union President Ursula von der Leyen to be chief guest in the dialogue. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh exhorts US companies to join India's Make for World drive. New Delhi condemns US Representative Ilhan Omar's visit to Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Russia claims liberation of flattened city of Mariupol after nearly 2 months of fighting. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson visits various establishments in Gujarat. Sarita Moore and Sushma Shokhin win bronze medals for India in women's freestyle weight categories at Asian Wrestling Championships in Ulaanbaatar. And in IPL cricket, Mumbai Indians have set a target of 156 runs before Chennai Super Kings at Dr. D.Y. Patil Stadium in Navi Mumbai. And now the news in detail. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will inaugurate the 7th edition of Raisina Dialogue on the 25th of this month. Briefing the media in New Delhi on Thursday, Ministry of External Affairs spokesman Arindam Bagchi said, President of the European Union Ursula von der Leyen will be the chief guest in the dialogue.
The 7th edition of the Raisina Dialogue will be inaugurated on Monday the 25th of April, and this time we are happy to announce that we can do it in in-person format, unlike in the past. Because of COVID we had to do it virtually. It will be over 3 days, 25th to 27th. This year also I'm happy to announce that the Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, will inaugurate the dialogue. Inaugural session will have the chief guest as the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Apart from Her Excellency Ursula von der Leyen, we will have the presence of former Prime Minister of Sweden, Carl Bildt, then former Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper, former President of Maldives, Mohammed Nasheed, former Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Abbott. We will also counting on a pre-recorded message from the President of the UN General Assembly, His Excellency Abdullah Shahid.
This 3-day event is based on the theme Terra Nova, Impassioned, Impatient, Imperiled. A report.
Mr. Bagchi said there are 6 broad thematic pillars of the dialogue, including rethinking democracy, end of multilateralism, water caucuses, and achieving green transitions. He said Raisina Dialogue will have around 100 sessions with over 210 speakers from 90 countries. The Raisina Dialogue is a multilateral conference committed to addressing the most challenging issues facing the global community. Every year, global leaders in policy, business, media and civil society are hosted in New Delhi to discuss cooperation on a wide range of pertinent international policy matters. The conference is hosted by the Observer Research Foundation in collaboration with the Ministry of External Affairs. Ramya for World News, All India Radio.
India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has said G20 is well placed to catalyze international policy coordination to deal with macroeconomic consequences and called for proactive and collective efforts towards protecting economies. She spoke at the G20 Finance Ministers and Central Bank Governors FMCBG meeting under G20 Indonesia Presidency in Washington. The global economic outlook and risk, international financial architecture and global health were in the agenda of the meeting. The minister noted that global growth momentum is dampened by prolonged inflation, supply chain disruption, volatility in energy markets and investor uncertainty. In Washington, she also met U.S. Secretary of Commerce Ms. Gina Raimondo and discussed ways to strengthen economic cooperation in the bilateral and global context.
India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has exhorted US companies to take advantage of the policy initiatives taken by NDA government in India and carry out joint research and development, manufacturing and maintenance of defence equipment to achieve the vision of Make in India, Make for the World. He was addressing the members of the American Chamber of Commerce in India virtually during its 30th annual general meeting on Thursday. He invited the US companies for co-production, co-development, investment promotion and development of maintenance repair and overhaul facilities in India. He listed out a number of initiatives taken by the government to facilitate partnerships between major original equipment manufacturer and Indian companies. The Defence Minister pointed out that US companies have not only been a source of FDI and and employment in India, but are also contributing to India's defense exports, totaling around $2.5 billion to US in last 5 years. External Affairs Ministry of India said that it had received a request from Japan for permission to land in Mumbai to pick up humanitarian supplies from United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, depot for Ukraine and its neighbouring countries. While briefing media in New Delhi on Thursday, External Affairs Ministry spokesman Arindam Bagchi said approval has been conveyed for picking of such supplies from India using commercial aircraft.
We had received a request from Japan to land in Mumbai to pick up humanitarian supplies from the UNHCR depot for Ukraine and its neighboring countries. We have conveyed our approval for picking up such supplies from India using commercial aircraft. So that is one aspect of it. There is a separate request for overflight clearance of SDF aircraft across India, and that is a separate thing, and that has also, I understand, been processed. Humanitarian cargo, as per established norm, that has been processed.
Mr. Bagchi condemned U.S. Representative Ilhan Omar's visit to a part of the Indian Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir that is currently illegally occupied by Pakistan. He said if such a politician wishes to practice her narrow-minded politics at home, that may be her business, but violating India's territorial integrity and sovereignty in its pursuit makes it ours.
Representative Ilhan Omar, Congresswoman, we have noted that she has visited a part of the Indian Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir that is currently illegally occupied by Pakistan. If such a politician wishes to practice her narrow-minded and politics at home, that may be her business. But violating our territorial integrity and sovereignty in its pursuit makes this ours, and we think the visit is condemnable.
India's Home Minister Amit Shah has described terrorism as the biggest form of human rights violation, and its elimination is necessary to protect human rights. Addressing the 13th National Investigation Agency or NIA Day program in New Delhi on Thursday, Mr. Shah asked NIA to work with full determination to curb terrorism. He said the Narendra Modi government has adopted zero-tolerance policy towards terrorism and is working to root out its menace from India. About Jammu and Kashmir, the minister said action against terror funding greatly helped in curbing terrorism there. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh reiterated that disengagement and de-escalation is the way forward along the northern borders. Mr. Singh expressed full confidence that while troops are standing firm, the ongoing talks for peaceful resolution will continue. Mr. Singh was speaking at the Army Commanders' Conference being held in New Delhi. Mr. Singh stated that unconventional and asymmetric warfare, including hybrid war, will be part of future wars. He said cyber, information, communication, trade and finance have all become an inseparable part of future conflicts. Referring to the situation along the western borders, he complimented the Army's response to cross-border terrorism. However, he said that the proxy war by the adversary continues.
Mauritius Prime Minister Pravin Jagannath visited Varanasi and the famous Kashi Vishwanath temple on Thursday. The PM of the island nation is on an 8-day official visit to India and also held bilateral talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. During his address at the Global Ayush Investment and Innovation Summit, Mr. Jagannath called India the pharmacy of the world and expressed gratitude to the country for sending Ayurvedic medicines during COVID-19 pandemic. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on India-Mauritius ties. In conversation are Anil Vadva, former diplomat, and Nilova Roy Chaudhary, journalist.
India and Mauritius share the closest level of bilateral ties, encompassing almost every aspect from civilizational, historical, and cultural linkages to economic and trade relations and strategic defense ties. India has been one of the largest trading partners and exporters of goods and services to Mauritius, particularly since 2007. Earlier this year, in March, Mauritius became a member of the Colombo Security Conclave, a grouping of the National Security Advisors of India, Sri Lanka, and the Maldives. This grouping of NSAs works to enhance regional security by focusing on areas such as maritime security, countering terrorism, combating transnational crime, cybersecurity, and various others. Prime Minister Pravin Jagannath has arrived in India along with a high-level delegation and will be in India between 17th and 24th April. He landed first in Gujarat, where he participated in the groundbreaking ceremony of the WHO Global Center for Traditional Medicine in Jamnagar on April 19th. He's also participated in the Global Ayush Investment and Innovation Summit in Gandhinagar on April 20th, along with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Calling India the pharmacy of the world, Mr. Jagannath thanked India for its generous assistance to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. He is also scheduled to travel to Varanasi. Ambassador Anil Vadhva joins us this evening to elaborate on what makes the India-Mauritius relationship so unique and special. Anil, Mr. Jagannath is visiting India. What main drivers of this particular visit?
So this visit was quite overdue, and we have regular visits between India and Mauritius, and this time around there's been a gap of a few months, almost a year before a major visit was exchanged. The External Affairs Minister was in Mauritius last year, where some important significant agreements in the defense side in particular were signed, and now it is important that this relationship is reassessed and further progress is made in this relationship, because India considers Mauritius as a very important component of its policy of Sagar, security and growth for all in the Indian Ocean region. Also, the historical and long ties between India and Mauritius, they require a constant nurturing of this relationship, especially because of Chinese inroads into the Indian Ocean and its attempts to forge new linkages with countries like Mauritius in the Indian Ocean region. This visit in particular, as you said, is a week-long visit where, of course, the focus in Gujarat has been on traditional medicine, which will have a big resonance in Mauritius because of the predominantly Indian origin population. 68% of the population, or 1.2 million people in Mauritius are of Indian origin, mainly people who had gone there as indentured labor and now have been transformed into a modern society and are contributing a lot to the Mauritian economy. After that, the visit will take place in Varanasi, which is also the constituency of Prime Minister Modi, also a holy city for the Hindus. And besides the bilateral discussions will happen, in fact, Prime Minister Modi has already met him, and they had wide-ranging discussions on how to improve the relationship in several areas because it's a diverse relationship that India shares with Mauritius.
India and Mauritius signed something called a Comprehensive Economic Cooperation and Partnership Agreement last year. Now, the thing is, in recent years, I was looking at some of the figures. Indian exports to Mauritius appear to have declined somewhat. Do you think this SECPA that has been signed last year is going to have a salutary effect on that? What are the implications of an agreement of this kind?
I think the agreement was signed to provide a level playing field to exporters from India, because China had signed a similar agreement with Mauritius just 2 months before. And of course, the Chinese agreement, because it was negotiated over a relatively shorter period of time, whereas the Indian one took quite a number of years to negotiate. So therefore, the Indian-Mauritius agreement is a comprehensive agreement which takes into account the complexity of the relationship, especially in the financial side, and it has gone into effect on the 1st of April. What will happen through this is that Indian exporters will have equal amount of duty-free access into the Mauritian market and thereafter into the African market. Mauritius is not just a single market, because it has comprehensive economic agreements with a number of African countries, and therefore it's very important for India to have a foothold into that market as well.
So does this Comprehensive Economic Cooperation and Partnership Agreement, does this also envisage Mauritius being a kind of an inaugural sort of ground for India to make an entry into the rest of Africa, where it's already placed, I thought, in certain ways?
Yes, India is actually is doing pretty well in Africa in recent years, but there is a big challenge as far as China is concerned in Africa, as you know, both in terms of project exports as well as in terms of commodities. And the Chinese are investing a lot into the commodity sector in order to fuel its own economy. Whereas India has developed this relationship with Africa on a much more comprehensive basis, which actually benefits both sides. So in that situation, it's extremely important that India has a level playing field and an equal opportunity, to play the ground in Africa.
You talked a little, you mentioned in passing the complexities of the economic relationship, including the financial sector. I mean, there was a time when, this bilateral trade investment and the, the routing, as it were, of foreign funds into India, Mauritius was being used. Has that problem somewhat been sorted out? Because there were some gray areas there which were a bit sensitive.
Yes, I think it took some years, but the Indian government and the Mauritian government finally have reached an agreement a few years ago, and those issues have been ironed out. Essentially, it was the fact that, the foreign direct investment was being routed through Mauritius because of certain concessions that investors would get, which was actually, inflating those figures, and at the same time depriving the Indian state of certain amount of revenues which they should have otherwise got. So there have been amendments on the Mauritius side to this treaty, and finally, I think that issue has been sorted out for the foreseeable future. We also had a similar agreement with Singapore, if you recall, and again, this agreement has followed on the lines of Singapore, which is obviously much more balanced for both sides. Due to the traditional relationship that Mauritius had with India, this was always a sensitive issue, and successive governments had found it very difficult to actually ask the Mauritian government to change a provision which would give them much more benefits traditionally. So that was an issue for some time, but it's behind us now.
That's great. So that would probably be adding to the buoyancy of these inflows into the Indian stock markets as well, I guess, because the flows have become cleaner and, less, more transparent, as it were. Would that be a correct assessment?
Yes, there has been simultaneously, there have been a number of steps taken by the Ministry of Finance to ease foreign direct investment into India and investment by foreign portfolio investors into India, and also some changes that have been brought about in the taxation laws for investments, which have helped in the buoyancy in the stock markets. And I think the government is continuously trying to do that in order to attract foreign investments and foreign portfolio investment in particular.
Looking at it sort of objectively, the India-Mauritius relationship seems like a very one-sided affair at a certain point of time, given the sizes of the two majors involved. Now, why is Mauritius as crucial as it is for India? I mean, you started off by saying, of course, the Sagar Initiative, the Indian Ocean part of it. What else makes this tiny little island nation so very, very important for India to have as a partner?
So Mauritius sits astride the important sea lanes of communication. It is strategically extremely important for a number of major powers around the world. If you recall, Diego Garcia was a point in contention for a very long time, precisely because of this reason. And India has made a lot of headway with Mauritius as far as strategic ties are concerned. Firstly, through the maritime domain awareness issue, with the agreement to fund and to install coastal radars for Mauritian security. And also for currently, India is also helping Mauritius develop an island with its own jetty. It has gifted Dornier aircraft and Dhruv helicopters to monitor its coastline. It's also helping Mauritius in anti-piracy operations. All this will help and contribute to the security and growth for all doctrine, which India seems to be taking quite seriously now, not just with Mauritius, but also with the Vanilla Islands, with Seychelles, with Maldives, and with Sri Lanka. And therefore, Mauritius joining the grouping of national security advisors, Colombo. It's a very important development, which will lead to much greater cooperation in practical terms between all the countries concerned.
Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador Vadvad.
Thank you very much.
This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
Russia has claimed the liberation of the flattened city of Mariupol after nearly 2 months of fighting. President Vladimir Putin on Thursday hailed the liberation of Mariupol after Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu told him Moscow controlled the Ukrainian port city apart from the giant Azovstal steel plant. Taking full control of Mariupol on the Azov Sea would be a major strategic victory for Russia, helping it to connect annexed Crimea to the territories of pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine. On the other hand, the West staged another show of support for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky with a visit to Kiev by the Spanish and Danish prime ministers and vowed the EU would do everything possible to help Ukraine win the war. Mr. Zelensky said Ukraine still did not have enough weapons, despite billions in Western military aid that has forced Russia to refocus its offensive away from Kiev and towards the east of the country. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is expected to announce investments in science and technology collaborations in Gujarat. He visited Gujarat Biotechnology University or GIFT City in Gandhinagar and also visited the JCB company plant at Halol near Vadodara along with Gujarat Chief Minister Bhupendra Patel. According to sources, the Gujarat Biotechnology University is under construction at a cost of about 200 crore rupees. It is being established by the Science and Technology Department of Gujarat and the University of Edinburgh, United Kingdom. The British Prime Minister also met Chairman of Adani Group, Mr. Gautam Adani, in Ahmedabad. The British Prime Minister also visited Sabarmati Ashram and paid rich tributes to Mahatma Gandhi. He also visited the Akshardham Temple in Gandhinagar. Mr. Johnson arrived in Ahmedabad on Thursday morning.
Under the Quad's flagship vaccination partnership, a consignment of COVID vaccines was handed over jointly by India, Australian and Japanese ambassadors and chargé d'affaires of US to Thailand. The consignment, comprising 2 doses of Made in India Covovax vaccines, was presented to Deputy Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul in Bangkok on Thursday. The External Affairs Ministry said in a release that this is the second consignment of vaccines delivered by India under the Quad vaccine partnership after the inaugural delivery to Cambodia on 12th of April. Thailand government has conveyed its appreciation for the vaccines received from the Quad and for its collective assistance to Thailand. The vaccines have been supplied to fulfill Prime Minister Narendra Modi's commitment made at the Quad Leaders Summit in Washington, D.C. in September last year. China has allowed Sri Lankan students to return to China even as Indian students are waiting for their return. The Sri Lankan embassy in Beijing on Thursday said in a press release that the Chinese embassy in Colombo has finalized 2 groups of students to return to China. The Sri Lankan embassy, without giving any further details, said that additional students are being processed to return to China. China has been given the pretext of a severe COVID pandemic situation for not allowing international students, but has been selectively allowing students from few countries. Return of Sri Lankan students is announced at a time when many provinces of China are facing a severe COVID-19 situation, including its financial capital Shanghai, which has been in lockdown for the last 3 weeks. There is no clarity so far about any timeline for the return of Indian students, even as Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi during his Indian visit last month assured External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar that he would speak to the relevant authorities on his return on this matter.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi participated in the celebrations of the 400th Prakash Parv of Sri Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji at the Red Fort in New Delhi on Thursday evening. Mr. Modi addressed the gathering and also released a commemorative coin and postage stamp on the occasion. The program highlighted the teachings of Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, the 9th Sikh Guru, who sacrificed his life to protect religion and human values, ideals and principles in world history. He was executed for supporting the religious freedom of Kashmiri Pandits on the orders of Mughal ruler Aurangzeb. On to sports. Sarita Moore and Sushma Shaukin won bronze medals for India in the respective women's freestyle weight categories at the Asian Wrestling Championships 2022 in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia on Thursday. 2-time Asian champion Sarita Moore won 2 of her 4 group matches in the 59kg division to finish third in the field of 5 grapplers. Sarita lost to eventual gold medalist Sara Natami of Japan via technical superiority and suffered a narrow 2-1 loss to Shovador Batarajav of Mongolia in her first 2 matches. However, she bounced back to defeat Dilfuza Ambetova of Uzbekistan via technical superiority and Diana Kayumova of Kazakhstan 5-2 to take the bronze. In the 55 kilogram weight category, Sushma Shokhin lost her matches to Umi Imai of Japan and Organ Chal Ganbatar of Mongolia via technical superiority. Shokhin then defeated Altin Shagayeva from Kazakhstan 5-0 and Uzbekistan Sarbinaz Jianbaeva 12-0 to finish third in the group of 5. The remaining Indian women wrestlers Manisha 50 kilograms, Sonika Huda 68 kilograms and Sudesh Kumari 76 kilograms failed to bag the medals. India have so far won 7 bronze medals at the championships. Indian Greco-Roman wrestlers concluded their campaign at the championships with 5 medals on Wednesday.
In IPL cricket, Mumbai Indians have set a victory target of 156 runs before Chennai Super Kings at Dr. D.Y. Patil Stadium in Navi Mumbai. In reply, Chennai Super Kings were 103 for 5 in 15 overs when reports last came in. Earlier, Chennai won the toss and chose to field first. Delhi Capital beat Punjab Kings by 9 wickets at the Barbaun Stadium in Mumbai on Wednesday.
Now let's take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Let's take a look at the press reports on China first. Local media reports Shanghai on Thursday reported nearly 18,500 new infections, including more than 2,600 symptomatic cases, bringing the city's total cases to 4,24,000 since 1st of March. South China Morning Post writes, Chinese doctors raised doubts over the treatment's effectiveness and questioned why millions of capsules were delivered to a city desperate for the supplies and food deliveries to the people in lockdown. The Tibet Journal News reported that the Dalai Lama granted Thekse Rinpoche, the head of Ladakh's Thekse Monastery, Mr. Thubstan Shewang, the president of the Ladakh Buddhist Association, and Wen Shatup Chamba, the president of the All Ladakh Gonpa Association, a special audience at his residence. The Fayul News reported that the prominent Tibetan ward Tashi Wangchuk continues to face harassment from government right officials even after completing his 5-year prison sentence.
Now let's have a look at the press reports on Nepal. Khabar Hub reports that Nepal has emphasized that collective commitments were necessary for energy security. The Rising Nepal says that the Confederation of Nepalese Industry, CNI, claimed that the country's economy is not in crisis.
Now let's take a look at the press reports on Pakistan. Dawn reports that Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif on Wednesday appointed Syed Tariq Fatimi, a close aide of PMLN Supremo Nawaz Sharif, as his special assistant on foreign affairs. The news reports that Sardar Akhtar Mengal, an ally of the federal government and head of the Balochistan National Party Mengal, did not attend the oath-taking ceremony of the federal cabinet on Tuesday in protest against the Shaghi incident.
Now let's have a look at the press reports on Bangladesh. The Elite Law Enforcement Agency of Bangladesh Rapid Action Battalion, RAB, has denied allegations levelled by a news site that it was involved in the disappearance of BNP leader Elias Ali, reports Daily Star. Foreign Minister Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen has raised questions on the quality of the U.S. Human Rights Report on Bangladesh, reports Business Standard. And now let's have a look at the press reports on Afghanistan. Khama Press writes, World Bank is set to resume 3 major projects in Afghanistan. Business Standard reports that fault lines within Taliban come to fore after Pak airstrikes in Afghanistan.
A quick look at the headlines once again. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to inaugurate 7th edition of Raisina Dialogue on the 25th of this month. European Union President Ursula von der Leyen to be chief guest in the dialogue. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh exhorts US companies to join India's Make for World drive. New Delhi condemns US Representative Ilhan Omar's visit to Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Russia claims liberation of flattened city of Mariupol after nearly 2 months of fighting. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson visits various establishments in Gujarat. Sarita More and Sushma Shokhin win bronze medals for India in women's freestyle weight categories at Asian Wrestling Championships in Ulaanbaatar. And in IPL cricket, Mumbai Indians have set a target of 156 runs before Chennai Super Kings at Dr. D.Y. Patil Stadium in Navi Mumbai. And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Namibia.
Vaishnav jane to tere kai hai je peer parai jane rahe par dukhe upakare kare tohe man abhiman nane rahe Vaishnav jane to तेरे कहिए जे पीर पराई जाने रहे.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.